with Janice Cobb of Save My Pet ID Tag. Engraved with your pet's info, they allow emergency personnel to start care for your pets if you're sick or injured. Head over to SaveMyPetIDTag.com and explore products. They ensure peace of mind for you and for your four-legged family.
Exactly what is good dog training? How could you make dog training a win-win for you and your dog? Our special guest is about to unleash some answers. And guess what? It involves love and science. Please welcome to our show the founder of the renowned School for the Dogs located in New York City. She is Annie Grossman. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you again.
It is nice to see you again. So, Pet Pals, Annie is here to share some gems from her latest book. It's garnering major woofs of approval from top pet experts. And the book is called How to Train Your Dog with Love and Science. Hey, Annie, we need to bring out the best in our dogs. We need love and science. Is that right?
I think so. There's a lot of static out there when it comes to thinking about dog training, and a lot of belief in what I would call folklore and myth, when really dog training is an application of the science of behavior. And kind of just coincidentally, what we have learned about how to train dogs results in a lot of love, a lot of giving and getting in a way that I think feels good for everyone involved and can amazingly produce great results.
Well, we're going to dive into this book. It's 318 pages or so, and we're going to talk about some of the people that give you Atta Annies, because I think there's like 5 or 7 pages of testimonials. I've seen books with a few testimonials. What that says to me as a former newspaper reporter is people respect what you do. So before we get started, though, we got to have you do a little bit of
Annie as a kid.
You really didn't like school, did you? School wasn't
No. The whole preface of the book is kind of about my own experience as, you might say, a puppy in school. And good. How really unhappy I was. I lacked choice. I don't feel like I had a lot of say in what I got to do. I was sort of mandated to do this and that. And it resulted in depression, like childhood depression. And
that the phrase you said is you felt the sting of failure. And you also in September were already counting the months until the summer break.
Oh my gosh, every September, yes. And I have the line in there. My dad, I remember like dropping me off at first grade one day and being like, "You only have to get through 11 more years." No,
that was really positive.
I didn't like it, and it did not leave me feeling like in love with learning. I thought sort of learning was this thing that happened in this building and it was sort of forced upon you. Yeah. And it was only as an adult in learning about dogs and dog training that I realized that learning is something that happens all the time. We are all constantly learning how to best live in the environment that we are put in. And I think
let me ask you this, because I think it's pretty ironic. You weren't really anxious to go to a school, and yet now you school dogs and people, and you say that your school has no grades, no arguments, and no aging out of nap time. Now that sounds like heaven on earth to me.
Yeah, I mean, so I have run School for the Dogs in New York City since 2011. It started in my Manhattan apartment in my living room.
Really?
And we're now located in a 2-story storefront location in downtown Manhattan in the East Village. And yeah, it's a place where dogs want to be and where people want to be, quite frankly. Dogs, I call it reverse hooky. Dogs play reverse hooky, where it's like, they try and come to school even when we're closed. And in my feeling is that is really how ideally schools should be. We should all
Exactly.
we should all be opting into learning, and certainly opting into something where we're spending so much of our time. And dogs are great because they're so forgiving. And I think it's a really nice way to kind of experiment with teaching when you have this very forgiving, very eager animal in your living room. So much of dog training traditionally has been about trying to trying to get people to think about like dogs and humans as very separate things. This is dog psychology, and it's very different than human psychology. And certainly dogs are not humans and vice versa. But my feeling is we can start from what we have in common.
Yeah,
and what do
and
we have
we
in
all
common?
are.
The laws of learning.
Yeah, we all are sentient beings. And is that so? When people see this title, explain, what do you mean by love and science? Train your dog with love and science.
Like I said, the science behind dog training is the science of behavior, which was kind of only discovered about 100 years ago. B.F. Skinner is a main character in the book, and he did a lot to codify what we now know about the science of behavior. And he did a lot of experiments with what's called operant conditioning. And operant just means that like the animal is operating on their environment in order to affect change. And conditioning is just another way of saying learning. And
Hey, look at you, Miss, from the first grade to now. Look at that. That was very good.
And part of operant conditioning is reinforcement. Operant conditioning is how an animal is, like I said, operating on their environment to affect change. And if something is being added to the equation that's encouraging a likelihood that a behavior is going to happen again, that is called positive reinforcement. A behavior is positively reinforced if you're adding something, generally something the animal really likes, as a consequence to the behavior. And if you're positively reinforcing your dog, that means you're giving your dog something desirable, be it a treat or play or affection. And
Where the love starts slipping in.
that feels a lot like love. And one of my favorite quotes, this is in the book from B.F. Skinner, comes from he actually wrote a novel in the 1940s that was at the time it was actually called sort of like, this is what the world would look like if it was run by dog trainers.
Oh,
Although dog training, I think at that point was not actually as full of love as I think it should be. But he wrote a book that was kind of like a utopia based on how we could be getting behaviors from everybody using positive reinforcement. And the quote in the book that I love so much is, "What is love except another word for positive reinforcement?"
I like it.
Because when we're encouraging behaviors in others, it feels a lot like love.
in your book, you actually have what's called the Good Dog Training Pledge. I'm not going to have you read it, but it's on the back of the book. And what's the essence of this pledge? Because when training a dog, I pledge to do, raise a paw, all I can do, and you have all these bullet points.
Dog training is a completely unregulated field, at least in the US. And that means that truly anybody can say, I'm a professional dog trainer. And unfortunately, I think that has resulted in a lot of dog training that is really just animal abuse under a different name. And I don't think people consider their values before they go and train a dog, nor are they necessarily operating with information that is rooted in science and research. And I think that by establishing what your values are, it's kind of like a starting point. So my Good Dog Training Pledge is really my values. And if you agree with my values, I encourage you to sign the pledge. You can also find it online at schoolforthedogs.com/pledge. But basically it says, I am going to try and change behavior using methods that use as little force and coercion as possible. I'm going to really consider what behaviors I need to get from my dog. And I'm going to try and get those behaviors in such a way where my dog is going to be opting in.
I like it. Hey, Pet Pals, we're speaking with Annie Grossman. She runs the School for the Dogs in the Upper East Side of New York City.
East
Village. Yep. Listen to me. I'm trying to sound like I know New York. It's in New York City, the Big Apple. Hey, we're going to talk more with Annie after we take a quick break. You all know the drill. We got to sit, stay. We'll be right back.
Pet Greens just donated a large amount of catnip and cat grass to Beagle Freedom Project, who recently just converted an animal testing lab into an animal sanctuary called Freedom Fields. Giving cats in a rescue access to cat grass and catnip can really help with their mood or acclimating if they came from outside to inside. And reducing a cat's anxiety really helps their chances of getting adopted. If you'd like to learn more about Pet Greens, or if you're a nonprofit and would like to request some cat grass for your sanctuary, please visit petgreens.com.
Arden Moore here with some great news. I have not one, but 2 calendars coming out in 2025. Order yours now. For my feline friends, it is How to Speak Cat. You're going to learn why and how cats purr and how do they really talk using their tails. For my dog folks, we got How to Speak Dog. Why do dogs dig to dig? And what does it mean when they go belly up? And what does it really mean when they're giving you doggy kisses? Answers are here. Get your paws on the calendars today. Go to Amazon.com or click on this QR code. Paws up. Welcome back to the Four-Legged Life Show with Arden Moore. We're speaking with author and dog trainer extraordinaire. She is Annie Grossman. She's got a new book out. It is called How to Train Your Dog with Love and Science. And Annie, I wanted to get into the fact that I love that you say in your intro, if you love your dog, there's a good chance you're confused, both of you. And because I love bodily fluids, talk about your pee analogy, where it's okay to pee and when it's not, but it's all from the dog or the person's perspective.
Sure. I mean, we have the idea that we don't want our dogs to pee inside, which makes then we go and put wee pads down under their feet, which feel nice and soft to pee on. And then we take them away and we expect the dog to not pee in the place where they were. I specifically talk about like your dog, it's okay for your dog to pee on the grass in the park, but not on the sisal rug that might feel very similar inside
It's
of
green.
your
It looks
home.
like grass. It feels like grass.
I wonder if a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're so conditioned from cartoons and movies and whatever to think of dogs as basically like people and furry bodies and like with a sense of morals and right and wrong and understanding of like apartment living and this, that, and the other. Where really, I think most of the times dogs are pretty darn confused and are really just like doing their best to try and get by. And yet when they make mistakes, we label them as being willful, stubborn, difficult, where generally I think they're trying to get by, trying to please us, trying to do the right thing, trying to not get into trouble, but it's not easy because they don't speak English. And if they don't know how to sit, it doesn't really help if you ask them to sit 7 times.
Maybe. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I love the fact that your book is divided into 4 parts and you're talking about some of the things that we've tripped on when it comes to training and how to learn by association. And in the section 3, you say, do try this at home. So let's talk about dog language. You say there's a training triad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I even read your book. What do you think, girl? I read your book.
Yeah, early on when I was training professionally, I realized that so much of training comes down to really 3 things. Setting the stage, sort of creating an environment that's ideal for getting the behaviors that you want. That's like the first part of the training triad. How can you manage the environment?
Yes.
And that's like everything that we can be doing from the outside in, because environment truly does impact behavior in a huge way. How can we limit a dog's space so that they're operating in the spaces that we want, doing the things we want? How can we feed them? How can we give them their food in such a way that they're going to be spending time doing things that we want? That's feeding them in toys or using food in training. But like, how can we use all of the
Good.
tools in our toolbox? Then the second thing to really think about is how we can reward behaviors that we like. And every dog is different. So part of getting to know your dog is figuring out what is truly rewarding to your dog. And some of that is like literally, what do they like to eat?
Yep.
Can you use cheese as a reward? Can you use kibble as a reward? But also, can you use head scratches as a reward? Can you?
Well,
use
that's my
snuggles
personal
or-
favorite, head scratches. I'll do anything for a good head scratch.
I mean, it's generally a lot easier to use food than it is to use praise or play or anything else, only because you can't like slice up play and praise the way you can slice up a hot dog. So it generally is not as exact and as quick to dole out, but it certainly can be part of what's in your toolbox. And then the third really important part of this triad is timing.
Okay.
Because it's often positive reinforcement training is often misunderstood as just tossing treats at your dog willy-nilly. And while there are some situations where I think tossing treats at your dog willy-nilly might not actually be a bad idea, often we want to be very thoughtful about what behaviors we are rewarding. And the way that you can do that is to try and pinpoint the behaviors that you like. And that's where using something that we call a marker comes in.
Okay.
The marker I usually use is a clicker, which is a little handheld device, but you can also use a word like yes.
Okay. So
And,
let's do it. Let's have a little fun experiment. I am your new dog, and my name is Ardo. So use a little clicker to get me to sit or do something you want. Mark the behavior. So
what I would
it.
do, and actually it is sometimes a game that we play with dog owners. What I would do is set up an environment where I thought it was going to be likely that you were going to sit. I mean, you would probably sit at some point, but if I can get you tired out, if I can have a comfy chair in the room, if I can have you in a smaller room, maybe rather than a
I'm very
larger
excited.
room. A lot of the time, the way we get a behavior is literally waiting for the behavior to happen. We
Okay.
tend to think about dog training as like it's the human who sort of elicits the behavior in the dog. But actually, it can be quite effective to let the dog figure out what it is that you want and just waiting for that sit to happen without you trying to elicit it and then clicking or saying.
Okay.
your
So
marker word like yes.
I'm Ardo the dog. I just sat on the floor. Boom. Come on, Annie. What do you do?
You're going to use your clicker or your marker word like you're taking a picture of that moment. And then you are going to follow it with a reward, whether that's a food reward or, like I said, a head
Pinot
scratch. But
Grigio,
what I usually
please.
like to do is toss a little treat, like toss a piece of hot dog so that you're resetting your dog so that they
Oh.
have to get up.
Gotcha.
And then they're left thinking, what is it that just happened? What did I do to make that happen? Maybe
like
I
that.
should try and sit again. And that's
Oh,
really
I'll
the
too.
beginning of how we teach behavior.
Yeah, I'll do my best to be a good girl. Now, New York City is very busy, lots of people, but I've always heard and seen, it seems like many dogs are walking past each other and they're not woof woofing. You have something in your class at the school for the dogs. It's called Sidewalk Psychos?
So it's not so much an exercise, but what it is a class. And the idea of the class is that we're setting up situations where we can acclimate dogs little by little to the kinds of stressors that they're going to have to face on the streets. We're asking a lot of our dogs when we're asking them to walk down city streets. Not only are they crowded with other dogs and other people, but they're completely unpredictable. And what we try and do in the class is both acclimate the dogs little by little to the kinds of stimuli that they see on the street, but in a controlled environment, and also give dog owners the skills that they need to handle dogs on the city streets. So that if they see a dog walker with 5 dogs on leashes coming, they know how to quickly get their dog to make a U-turn or to get their dog to walk on their other side. And I think these are skills that if you have a dog who's already reactive to another dog on the street can make a huge difference. If you're just have a dog who's new to walking on the city streets can make a big difference towards keeping a dog from ever becoming reactive.
And also, there's some funky stuff on the sidewalk. I'm thinking pieces of hot dog that have been marinated for far too many days or something, right?
Yeah, marinated in the piss on the street.
Yes, you can say it. Yeah. Yeah. So the dog has a great nose. So I guess we shouldn't be on our cell phone with our earplugs in. What do you suggest from the human side?
Two big suggestions. One is equipment. I love using hands-free leashes. I almost always use a hands-free leash with my dog. I like wearing one that I can wrap around my waist.
Yeah.
It's just a simple thing. You could even just use a carabiner and attach it with to your belt. But having two hands free gives you so much more ability to use food rewards on the street. And I think you should be using food rewards on the street because you want to be the most interesting thing to your dog on the street, which is difficult when you have so much to be competing with. But, if you reliably are a source of tiny bits of hot dogs or tiny bits of cut up string cheese, which is often what I use with my dog on the street, you are going to have a lot more control about where your dog is paying attention. And you want to build that reliability, build that interest. You're not necessarily always going to have to be a treat dispenser, but it's about teaching those new behaviors reliably.
And quickly tell us the 411 or 311 on Poppy, your dog.
Oh, I have a very sweet, very lazy pit bull Chihuahua mix named Poppy, and I write about her a little bit in the book. My first dog that I had as an adult was a little Yorkie Poo, a super overachiever who traveled the world with me, and we did training all the time. And Poppy, as my daughters say, is a lazy bones couch potato, but we have a lot of fun snuggling, and she's kind of the best dog in my life, the dog I need right now, considering the busy life I lead running a business and having two little kids. Oh, there she is on cue. But the training that I do with Poppy more than anything else, and I write about this in the book, is we call it jumpies. I sit on the couch, I put my foot up on the coffee table, and she jumps over my leg over and over every night. And it's a really great way for her to get a little bit of exercise. She goes on walks, but she's not that into it. That's a good way to get a little bit of cardio activity without me having to do much more than just sitting on my bum with a glass of wine on the couch.
Hey, everyone. We've been speaking with Annie Grossman. She is a dog trainer extraordinaire. If you're in the Big Apple, check out School for the Dogs. Is it schoolforthedogs.com?
Schoolforthedogs.com, and you can find me at anniegrossman.com. And the audiobook was just released actually today, so people should definitely check that out as well.
So get your paws on the audio or the print version of her latest book called Train Your Dog with Love and Science. Thanks so much for being on our show, Annie.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for making our tails wag by watching this guest interview from Arden Moore's Four-Legged Life. Four-Legged Life. Make sure to subscribe so you're up to date with all of our Four-Legged Life content.